Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Monroe ZBA meeting for August 27th, 2019. Just like to point out procedurally, we have exits in the back of the building through there. And in case we had to, we go through these doors and out that side door. So those are our emergency exits, should there be a need. With that, roll call.
Mike Murphy,
Present.
Eva Lewis, absent. Kevin Scully,
Present.
Austin C. Masai, not here, and Aaron Freed.
Present.
Okay, that makes a quorum. So, with that, I'd like to open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight. We have 2 new items and 2 returning projects. So our first project tonight is Con Kudo.
No, I reversed it.
What?
I gave a new, your packet.
Okay.
Because,
So I've been informed there's a new order tonight.
I'm sorry.
The first applicant tonight is 75 Seven Springs Road.
He has a conflict, so he asked if he could go first.
More on conflict.
Good evening. My name is Joel Mann from Brachman Associates on behalf of the applicant. Before I will go into the details what is proposed there, I will give a little bit background on this application. In 2015, we were before the ZBA for a variance, what was actually greater from what we are requesting on this application. The variance was this property is a non-conforming property as the width of the property, so it's impossible to keep the setbacks as per the zoning, and actually the existing house is pre-existing non-conforming with setbacks where it's less from the required zoning. At that time, the town of Monroe zoning still allowed to have accessory apartments. So we had proposed single family with an accessory. We got actually a decision at the end of 2015 on that, and everything was ready to go. I had prepared plans, was ready to submit, and it was about April when I finished the plans, and then the town of Monroe went in a moratorium for about 12, I don't remember exactly the dates. So as part of the new zoning, they removed the accessory apartment as they made it the restriction, and it's not feasible to work there anyway on this property. So after decisions back and forth, we are proposing just to rebuild a single family home on this property in a different configuration, updated, and this is the proposed application. So now, with regards to the design of this, we have proposed we here for 2 variances. One is for the lot coverage, but it's basically, actually it's more than 2, but it's the yard it's the lot size. It's the lot width. What is the problem? That it's only 100 feet width and they're requiring 125 in the R1 zoning district. And the other problem we have is regarding with respect to the setback. The required is 65 feet, and we are proposing actually less than what we got granted in 2015, and less what the existing house is. We're proposing 15 on one side and 23 on the other side. And the lot coverage, what we got approved at that time with accessory home was about 20 to 25%. That was and we are proposing only 16% on this property. So basically, we are here for the board. I think we have submitted all the required documents, including the denial letter from the building inspector, and a stamped site plan, as I know the chair likes to have a stamped site plan. And and I'm here to answer all the questions and the concerns from the board.
Okay, thank you for that introduction on your project. One of the things I just want to clarify is you plan on demolishing the existing house and
Correct.
building an entirely new house?
Correct.
Okay, and when we look at the site plan that's prepared here by Petersack and Fow, all right, this map incorrectly lays out the lot, the building envelope, the allowable setbacks.
You're right, I see, you're
Right.
right.
So I took the liberty of marking up their map to see what the correct layout would be. You know, just going over the variances that you're here for, and looking at the building inspector's letter, he talks about, number one is the minimum lot width. This was a pre-existing lot. The new regulations require 125-foot lot width. This only has 100, so that's kind of a 20% variation right there. Maximum lot coverage, he talks about 15%, which is allowable. You're asking for 16, which not very big in itself. The proposed, the minimum side yards, this is where we have the greatest variance from the code. The code requires 30 foot for the smallest side yard with a total side yard of 65. You're proposing 15 and 38. So those are really significant differences. It's like a 50%
Just
reduction.
want to clarify, it's 15 and 23 for the total of 38.
Yeah, correct,
Yeah.
yes. But nonetheless, I mean, what would be required would be 30 and 35, which you're providing is 15 and 23. So clearly, major setbacks on the side yard problem.
Oh.
This is a lot that is now governed by the 2017 zoning code, right? Everything that happened in the past is all history, and it's good to inform the board of where you've been in time. But right now, before this board, we have to enforce what's in the 2017 zoning code. So reading through that, you know, I see several big variances that you're looking for, in addition to one thing that the building inspector didn't quite mention, and that's lot area. Lot area, minimum lot area required in this zone is 1 acre. Right, and what you have here is 1.03 acres, but minimum lot area also deducts out wetlands, easements, and other encumbrances on the property. So you have a wetland area that's 0.35 acres. So that brings down your lot area, your net lot area to 29,600 square feet, where 43,560 is required. So that's another major variance. That's like you're 32% below the requirements there. So that's one variance that I think we need to add to the list going forward. The other matter I notice on the map is that you have a relatively small sanitary sewage system proposed for a relatively large house. In addition to being very small footprint, it's also too close to the wetlands. There, you need to have a 100-foot buffer between the edge of the wetlands and the edge of the sanitary sewer system. You only have about 85, 90 feet there. So those are other matters to consider here. The other thing is, you know, looking at the lot, you do have, because of the way the new code is, you have a narrow lot. What used to be a 100-foot lot width is now 125, and when you apply the setbacks to this 100-foot wide lot, we're taking 30 feet off one side, 35 off the other, and you're left with a strip in the middle that's 35 feet wide, on which you can build a house. Now, that sounds narrow, but if you turn the house long ways and you run it down the yard, I think our sound just went dead, but you know, you have like 240 feet by 35 where you can build a house. So, you know, you're asking for a lot of variances. That's my assessment. Does anybody else on the board have any comments or questions?
So the septic tank is existing already? It's going to be the same tank?
Kev, talking to your mic, please.
The septic tank is
I
existing?
think the mics went dead.
What's that?
I think the mics went dead.
No, they're on.
Yep, okay.
You can't hear your voice there?
I can now, I didn't hear it before.
I
Pull
didn't
your
hear it
mic a little
before.
closer. They're still on.
Okay,
Hello?
yep, I hear you.
The septic tank is pre-existing? It's gonna be the same tank?
It doesn't really state. It says approximate sewage disposal system. And it
It's
just,
approximate location.
yeah,
On both, though, it says approximate location.
right.
Do you have any information about that?
Yes. With regards to the, first on the septic, basically we are planning to use the existing system. This was probably installed not too far ago, and it's designed to serve a 4-bedroom house, and that's the same size of bedrooms are proposed here in this new house.
Do you know how many gallons that tank is?
I don't know. I can check on this.
Because it,
So this is an existing system that was recently installed and you're gonna be reutilizing it?
Yes.
So then there's probably plans in town hall at the building department
We'll
on
try
the
to
septic
find
system.
When you say recent, like approximately how recent? I'm not asking
I'm
for
not talking recent, like 2-3 years ago. Probably like, it's not like when the house was built here. Probably like 10-15
Okay,
years ago
okay.
or so. And it's functioned, that someone is living there, it functions. We have no issue on that. If I may address the chair's comments, or should we wait for other comments from the consultant?
Any other thoughts, guys?
do you have the building plans with you for the house?
For the proposed house?
Yeah.
I don't have it with me. I have some preliminary plans, but not here. So,
What's the difference? Do you know the difference between the square footages of the existing house and the proposed house?
not exactly, but I can check on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I might ask is that if, you know, the Peter, Zach, and Fowl map is going to be the map of record, that we get that corrected to show the proper building envelope. The other thing, as I noted before, I count 5 significant variances that you're asking for here. And I recognize that the zoning has changed since the lot was constructed, but, you know, you're tearing down the old house, and now you're coming back and saying, I want to build a brand-new house on this lot, but I don't want to comply with all of the zoning codes that apply to this lot at this point in time. As a matter of fact, you're complying with maybe 1 out of the 6. So, you know, that's, to me, that's problematic. It's a big ask. I don't see what the hardship is here, other than bad planning. I mean, I think what you need to do is look at this lot again and come up with a house design that fits inside that building envelope. Well, I know that may not be your preference. I mean, this is all self-created hardships with this new building that you're trying to put on this lot. It's very large. I mean, I don't even know if it complied with the, you know, with the old code at 15 and 23 feet side yards. Maybe it did. But the old code doesn't count anymore. That's the problem.
I'm correct to assume that there's no sewer on 7 Springs Road, correct?
No,
Not this far up.
No.
not at this
Yeah.
point. It's
I mean, that's,
very far away.
yeah, that's the other way to solve the problem is, you know, because in the zone you're in, you're allowed 10,000 square foot lots
Right.
if you had sewers.
So, regarding the question about the setback, for the variance for the setbacks, the existing house is also non-conforming. It's not like I'm going to create a new non-conforming object that wasn't previously
Right.
on the site.
And if you wanted to
We
keep
have
the
an
existing
existing
house, you can keep those existing nonconformities, but you're demolishing that house and you're building a whole new one. So you're starting all over again with a vacant lot and the current zoning code. And that's the way I read the situation.
What will happen, just for instance, if I want to build an addition to this house?
I would recommend that that addition fall within the bounds of the new zoning code, within that 35-foot
Fine,
width.
so that means that the existing house I can keep the same because I don't need to
Yes,
demolish
we can't tell you to tear that house down.
So if I can keep that the same, that's why I'm here. It's not like I'm asking to create a new non-conforming building when we have existing one, and I just want to rebuild this maybe a little bit bigger, and might be I'm not pointing out that I can maybe redesign the house only the width. What the existing house should be non-conforming, and the next part of it,
The rest of the house.
the rest of the house, I can keep it within the setback. That might be a. But there's other.
Or
I think I want to
subdivision
ask the
variances
attorney a
for you.
question
Yeah.
before we going into that discussion. Today, I'm not clear. I find something today in the code. It's section 57-89, speaking about supplemental bulk requirements and about undersized lots. I'm not clear on that. It seems that there is the possibility, I don't know if it's the zoning board or even the building inspector, to approve when you have an undersized lot where it's basically less than the width what is required in the zoning. It's a pre-existing lot, and they have the power to approve. I'm not sure if even I need the ZBA for that. I didn't have a chance to consult with the building inspector. It's basically when you go to variances on 5765, then it's on number 7. It's 5765 C7. That's reference to go to 5789, and it's speaking about undersized lots. It seems like that this might fall under that section, and then I don't need any variance for setbacks.
Yeah.
Heights exceptions, additional height limitations. Well, I can't advise you on that. You know, if you think that that applies and want to go about your application in a different manner, you can do that, but I mean, what you've presented to us tonight
I know.
is.
That's where something probably I need to consult with the building department. The next point is that I know that the town has proposed, because when they did the new zoning change, they know that, or they didn't know, they didn't want to know that they fall into a problem. They are doing a lot of lots non-conforming, and they have proposed something to change the zoning. And based on what I read in the proposed zoning, this lot will definitely be conforming. And I don't want to wait for that. I don't know if this is something what can help the zoning board to make their decision based on that this is something whereas everyone understands that this was wrong to begin with, and it's not like setting any precedents for the future for any similar situations. This can be like a spot of the record, because I want to move on. It's not like I want to wait, because you know a zoning change can be pushed away a couple of months, and there is something in a proposed change what will make this conforming, and I probably doesn't need any variances in that.
I have not
Just
seen
saying
that.
I want to say that for the record. I will probably submit something for the next planning board meeting, and that might be helpful too.
To save his own time, would he be able to submit a separate application while this application is active? Just to ease their timeline with building, in case that is the supplemental bulk requirements do apply? Are you allowed to have two active
No,
applications
I
at
don't
the
think
same
so.
time?
Not you know, because which one are we deciding on? Which one are we talking
I
about?
think-
Understood, I was
You know,
just more
if he
thinking
wants to
that-
put this on hold, rethink it and come back and resubmit something different,
I
that's.
think I will go in that route. When is the next submission date?
For
Okay, so
for
I think
ZBA?
For the ZBA, I think we can get this clarified within that week with the building department. Probably will need the interpretation from him if this is falls under this section.
September 3rd
Okay,
at noon,
okay,
and the meeting is September 24th.
fine.
So-
I think I can try to get this, and then I can meanwhile
It's next
change
Tuesday.
the application and the plan, and maybe this is the route we're going. Then I think the variances, or I don't need the variance at all. I don't know if the 15 and 16%. This is something I can fix, I can address. That's not my major thing.
Right, that's the smallest of
That's the
the
very
issues. You
smallest
can
thing.
shave a little bit off
So
here
it's
and
like-
there and bring that down to
That's
15%.
I came across with that today, so that's something.
If the chairman allows, I can give him an extension on his time. That's up
The
to
only
him.
problem is that if this is not the route I'm going, I want to be able to have my public hearing scheduled for the next month. I don't want to lose time on that. That's my
I'm in no rush to move this along. If you don't have your paperwork in order, I'm not gonna jump from here to a public hearing on an application that I haven't seen yet. So, you know, we're not looking at a public hearing in September. That's for certain, based on what's in front of us tonight.
For example, what type of
Yeah.
paperwork? Let's say we are going
Well, I mean,
with
if you
this.
wanna go with what's on the record, this is what we go with.
So
with
let's
this
say
app-
we are going with that. What is missing in order to schedule a public hearing? Like a revised map from Piers Act, I can have within a week, less than a week. So it's like,
For one thing, I think the chairman pointed out, it looks like there's an additional variance that's required, that's not in Mr. Maldonado's letter, but I think Chairman
has
Murphy
some-
makes a good point in
Yes.
regard to the wetlands with the lot.
I think he has a good point.
Yeah,
To
lot
tell you
area.
the truth, we never checked that wetlands real. It was something what the surveyor like put in years ago. I will, now it makes a difference, I will probably hire someone like Ferguson or the Wiki, whatever they're doing, that wetland delineations, and we'll delineate it for real and see what's going on.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to do it one way or the other, because
Yeah.
from my standpoint as a lawyer, we want to make sure that if we put it on
Right.
for a public
Right.
hearing, we're noticing the public as to all the variances that are required. So
Right.
we need to know, is that in, is it out?
So the only question is if there will be a completed submission before the submission date, if this is something what can work for a public hearing. That's my question. If,
For a public hearing when?
for the next 1st September.
No, because everything would have to be in order tonight for us to schedule a public hearing for September, because what you're saying is you're changing up your application, you can come back to us and want to hold a public hearing on an application we haven't seen yet in September. Okay, that's not happening.
The problem procedurally with that, and I understand why you want to move quickly, but if we don't know what the variances are going to be,
understand.
it's impossible procedurally for the board to know what they're voting to put on for a public
Right.
hearing.
Right.
So you got to know first, then vote to put it on.
You know, because you would have an awful lot of work to do in a week.
Would you be able to bring back the septic plans and the construction plans as well for this application? Or is this?
I will try to work on that. But the question is otherwise, let's say I don't have if I don't have the septic information before a building permit, the building inspector will ask, let's say we don't have any records, we will dig it up probably, we'll test it, we'll do or the dying test or other type of tests, we will get to it. But I don't see is that to be important now before
The
ZBA,
size of the
because-
system makes a difference.
Right,
Yeah,
we
the
will
size-
have,
I'm surprised
we
the
will
building
have a
inspector-
conforming system before a building permit, so.
All right. But
Either
bear
one
in
way
mind
or
that
the
where your wetlands limit is now, you're less than 100 feet away from
I need to
that.
check on that.
And that's
I'm not sure.
2/3 of your system, your existing system, that extends into the 100-foot
I'm not sure
buffer.
the limit, I didn't comment on that because I'm not sure, I think the distance is 50 feet to
No,
wetlands.
it's 100 feet to streams, lakes, watercourses, and wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your point, but remember, one of the criteria for the granting of an area variance is whether there would be an adverse effect or impact on the environmental conditions. So the issue is within the board's purview, even though you raise a good point that you couldn't get a building permit until you could design something that complied with law.
Right.
But it is within the board's purview to look at that and ask you about that, so.
And the other question is, if I have a pre-existing system or is approved, there are probably some type of waivers. I don't know if this is something I need to get from the health department or if this is something under jurisdiction from the.
That is health department law, and they're the only ones that can grant
They
waivers
can
on
grant
health
waivers
department
of that.
issues.
I see.
Now, I don't know where the wetland line comes from that's on this map. There's no call outs on
There
it.
was a surveyor did something a couple
Right.
years ago. He just used his survey. So we'll probably we'll make a real delineation and see where it is. Might be that it's completely wrong. Find out.
If you are going to do a delineation, I'd like to, see the reports and everything
Yeah,
on
sure.
that too, if
No
we're going to
problem.
change this
If I'm
line.
doing that, we'll provide you all the documentation.
Thank you.
So I got the points. It's too much open items for you to make a determination. Okay?
Mhm.
I got it.
Any other questions? David, you're okay?
No, all set.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
You wanna pick this up, Joel?
Yes.
You should have it.
What is it?
You don't, but you can get the packet early. Came in this afternoon.
Okay, very good. They were hoping that we were going to get something.
I called them.
Oh,
I
appreciate
called
it.
them to get it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
You too.
Oh, so we're doing this now. Nice. Next applicant is the second. Okay. Moving along. Our next applicant is Khan Kudo.
Before we begin, I wanted to disclose something on the record. Mr. Kudo, you're the same Khan Kudo that my firm represented many years ago in connection with an employment matter with Panda Express?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So you and I never worked together individually, but I know you were previously a client of the firm in a matter totally unrelated to your property.
Yes.
I wanted to disclose that to the board, so they're aware that my firm, years ago had a relationship with Mr. Kudo and represented him in an unrelated matter. I don't see any present conflict, any actual conflict. It's not going to affect my objectivity in advising the board in regard to the variance application, but I wanted to disclose it for the record, make sure all parties knew and all parties consented to me acting as counsel for the board if they saw fit.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't know I was that famous. You guys did a good job. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. There's not too many Khan Kudos, I figured it had to be the same one.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Would you like to make a presentation to the board on your matters you have before us?
I'm Stephen Reef, Great Day Improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to be building the sunroom for Con. It's a 3-season room. We're going to build it on the existing deck. We're not changing the footprint of anything. It's going to be a single slope, 3-season glass enclosure, and again built on the existing wood deck. I have some picture I can show you. You guys have seen these sunrooms before? And you have plans.
Yeah, I think we do have plans here on the sunroom. The one plan we don't have is the one plan that we need most here at the zoning board, and that's a survey map. Do you have a survey map? Was there a survey map that I received?
I don't believe so. You have everything that I received from him.
What's this? What's this?
There's a lot of photographs.
There's a map in this package. This was from back in May when they first submitted.
Right, so the only changes were that he had to do, in May, he didn't meet the 30-day requirement to respond to the building inspector's letter. So he had to reapply for a permit and start the application over. His paperwork all still remain the same with just some adjustments to the new dates and stuff.
Okay.
So anything from the building inspector was still there.
Here, I'm looking through my old folder.
Yeah, in my old folder, I did find a map. So I don't know if you have a copy of this map, or if this came from the building department directly. This is a map from 1998. Would you like to take a look at this map?
Yeah, I don't have a map.
But then I looked at the new application, and there wasn't one. That was in my old folder.
So this is not appropriate? Is that what you were asking?
I received a copy of this, I think, from the building department. That as part of this application package. I was talking to him. This was from back May 28th, 2019. And this is just a marked up map from the building inspector, and it's a 20-year-old map. All right, so let's take a look at what variances you require. And then we'll have to get copies of this map and distribute it and make it part of this application package.
The existing deck, was it granted, I see in the application it says that it was approved by the town of Monroe.
Yes, sir.
Just via building permit, or was there a variance required for it, or something else?
This is the building permit, sir.
Building permit.
Okay. Sure.
Long time ago.
Okay.
This is
Yeah, so the applicant handed me a building permit and a certificate of occupancy. The building permit is dated August 2, 2005, to construct a 16-foot by 22-foot open deck. And then the CO was issued on September 8, 2005 for the right rear 16 by 22-foot open deck. Is this a copy for the board, or do you need this copy?
That's fine, sir. I have copies.
You have copies, okay.
Okay.
Please, can I just see that paper for a second? I'll bring them back down to you.
Sure. Actually, it's better that you keep it and then make copies, I think, for
They
everyone.
should be in your packet. I'm looking at my
Oh,
packet,
it's in the packet?
and I have the one. I'm gonna look now for the other one, the building. Certificate of occupancy, I definitely have one of those.
Oh, yeah, I see the certificate of occupancy, yeah.
Can I see the building permit? So this is one I can keep for the file?
Please, please. If you need more copy, I can deliver to you tomorrow.
No, I can scan them into the board.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at the building inspector's letter from June 10th, 2019, he lists a series of variances here. Lot area, this is in, the district is SR 15. Lot area required is 15,000 square feet. Your lot only has 10,024 square feet. So that's, you know, like a 30% reduction in meeting the code. Front yard requirement is 40 feet. Your lot only has 34 feet, but that's the existing. This is a difference. Rear yard is 40 feet. Your lot only proposes 25. This is a difference, 25. And the 25 is being measured off of the enclosure of the deck. So that's what changes here, really. By enclosing the deck, that becomes part of the setback for that rear of the house, because it's a covered surface now. So that's really the one that you're changing significantly. The others are all pre-existing. Your lot coverage, 25% is allowable. You propose 26.3, and the building inspector says that this is only an estimate. I do not have an as-built survey. I suggest one be submitted for accurate calculation. This is an estimate of 1% more than the maximum. So, you know, the other thing is that we're looking at a map from 20 years ago that represents the condition your property was in back in 1998. I don't know if anything has changed out there, what else has been added or subtracted from the site. So that's why we often ask for an updated survey. You know, this survey was made 20 years ago for somebody other than yourself. Certified true and correct to Michael and Jacqueline Monroe.
You added the deck onto the house, correct, when you applied for the other?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a more updated survey at the time? Did he make you do? Because I know usually the building department makes you include an as-built survey, even if they take that other map and just mark over it, your architect or engineer.
I hired somebody to do it.
Do you have a copy of that? 'Cause that would-
I think they submit the application 2005 with some diagram or some kind of map, something.
Yeah, because even if I mean, that would be more valuable to us probably than that one is, even if it was marked up over it, correct?
Matter of fact, I remember first time that the inspector turned it down. He wanted to add something underneath the deck, so he came back and approved it. It's been a long time. So
I'm just wondering if maybe you have a newer, if maybe part of that application, if you'd be able to get a copy of that.
I don't have an application, but I have that only.
Well, no, but the building department should retain a copy of it. I would think they.
I think maybe they have it. Good question.
Just as opposed to you having to go to.
Yeah, good question. So I really don't know.
Yeah, because like I say, this is a 20-year-old survey that was prepared for others. I don't know what's happened on the property since then. I don't know if there are sheds out there that don't show up, sidewalks. I mean, we're basing decisions today on maps that are 20 years old. So I would really, prefer to see an updated survey. How many?
Yeah, in terms of covering, so that load will be fine on the existing footings and everything, and
Yes.
beams?
We're beefing up the existing deck to meet the code.
Okay. How are you beefing it up?
Footings and.
Oh, so more foot,
Right.
okay, that's what I said, that
Yeah.
more than the existing
Oh,
footings.
absolutely, yes.
Okay, that was bad, that was it. Does the current deck need to be removed?
No,
No, you're just adding to the existing deck.
yeah, I can, you know what these rooms look
No,
like.
no, I know what they look like.
Single
No,
slope.
I understand, yeah.
And 16 by 22
No, 16 by 18.
by 18.
Has
16
anything
by
else?
18. See, that's another thing. This map that's marked up proposes it as 16 by 22, three-season room. And this was reviewed by Ben back in January of 2019. So he may have been the one who marked this up in 2019.
Yeah, because we're leaving a space so that we can egress out of the, once we cover, we're leaving a space on the side. We do it A wall, B wall, C wall. On the C wall, we're gonna have a door exiting out onto the existing deck so that we can get down the stairs. So that's where the.
So the deck's 16 by 22, but the
Correct. Right, because
the
if you
unit
make-
is smaller.
Right, if you make the unit exactly that size, then you have to have a landing and stairs down. So we just.
So the roof is 16 by 22?
Correct. No, the roof is gonna be 16 by 18.
18.
So that, didn't you say there's a covered portion of the deck when you walk out of the room?
Uh,
Like I get you, if you have your deck is 10 by 10, your room making the room 10 by 8.
Correct. That
That
will not
step
be-
portion is not?
that will not be covered. No.
Okay.
All right, we've got cross sections here. And then we do have one plan view, but it doesn't really show, you know, how it's tying into the house and the existing deck. So another plan view, there's another one back here. What's this?
Your product can only be installed over the existing deck, correct? Or a deck in place?
This is
Like even if nobody had nothing, you would have to come install a deck and then you would go on top of that?
His situation, yes, you have to put it on a wood deck, yes, so that you can exit out through the existing sliding doors.
Yeah, that seems to be the one drawing we're missing is a good site plan that ties this deck into the house so that we can see where it is and to the property lines, because the way it's presented here in these drawings, the only two plan views we have is kind of a framing plan for the deck and then a window layout for the first floor. It really, you know, the one drawing I see, it shows that your deck ends at the edge of your house, and then here on these drawings, it looks like the house line extends beyond that. So I really can't tell what's going on, what the position of this is along that back wall. This gets back to having an up-to-date survey. You know, I don't think what you're asking for here is too big of an ask. You know, the encroachments already exist in these side yards. The deck is already there. You're putting a building on top of it, but you know, I don't have a survey map here that I can rely upon. I need something that really, you know, shows how you're tying into this house and what those new setbacks are. This is something that was marked up by Ben probably in his review of it, so. And again, I'm looking at a 20-year-old survey. I don't know what's changed out there since 20 years ago. How do we move forward here?
So I think what I'm hearing is that the board would like the applicant to provide a new survey showing the deck, showing the property, the existing structures, so they can see what the lot coverage is, depicting the existing deck, and then also showing where the proposed cover is, so the board can visualize also where the extra 4 feet that's not going to be covered is, and can just see it. And I think my thought is if the applicant would provide that, you know, I don't know how quickly you might be able to get that.
We'll do whatever you want us to do.
Okay, the survey map should reflect any improvements that are on the property, any fence lines, any sheds that have gone up, expansions of the pavement, any walkways, all of those things, all those
We have
hard
that in
surfaces.
some type of writing so that we can give it to the architect or whoever's gonna do it, so they know exactly your questions and you will answer them. Is that?
Ask them to do a nice detailed as-built survey.
Yeah, that's
As-
it.
Yeah.
Nice
that's-
detailed as-
Yeah,
I'm
that's,
just gonna
they
say
know what
that.
it is.
That's it. They'll know that.
Nice detailed as-built survey.
Yeah.
Showing all existing structures and any paved surfaces or concrete surfaces, any sheds, any fence lines.
Have there been any other changes to the property?
No, can't afford it, sir. Seriously. I
So
haven't
there's no,
changed anything.
so there's no,
That-
since 2005, there's been no,
The deck was only,
there was only,
oh, I paved the driveway, that's it.
but the existing driveway?
Yes, of course.
The surveyor should be sure to compute out the lot coverage, the existing lot coverage as well. I mean, he should do that as part of the survey, but that would be something that the board is most interested in, so they know if they're going to grant a variance, or if you're going to need a variance for that, that they know exactly what the number is.
No problem.
Someone local we can use, or we can use whoever we want?
You're welcome to use whoever you like.
Okay.
The last surveyor on this property was John Dragan. I don't know if he's still practicing. What else? Oh, what would be also very helpful to us is if, on the survey map, he put a table of zoning bulk requirements.
Table of zoning bulk requirements?
Bulk requirements, yes. The required yards, what's required, what's existing, and what's proposed, so that we can get a sense of exactly, what these variances are.
I'm writing all down.
Okay.
Required, existing, and proposed. Zoning bulk requirements. Required, existing.
Actually, I have a sheet here that might help you.
Yes. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, on that. Thank you.
Khan is building this for his wife. She has some illnesses, so,
Yes, we saw that.
yeah, so, I know
Appreciate
that's,
that.
but we're gonna comply with all of you. When do we need to get the survey in by so that we can come back?
September 3rd
Nah.
Yeah.
at noon.
So,
So,
for October, which is more realistic,
for October, the deadline is October 1st for the October 22nd meeting. If you can contact a surveyor who can get out to you right away,
Maybe local guy?
I cannot refer anybody.
That's a conflict
We're not allowed to do
of
that.
interest.
when
You're
we
on
get,
my-
we get to the
you're on
issue of, we
speaker.
don't know what to publish for the public hearing, because we don't know if the setbacks and surface coverages are the same.
before the cutoff date.
Right, can I, with your
By the time he
permission,
gets a surveyor and he gets the survey done, and he gets it back, it's gonna be a while. It's,
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen overnight, it's not gonna happen.
is that all he has to turn in, is the survey at this point?
Just the survey map.
So if we give him till Monday, September 9th, is that possible that he could get it done? That still gives us 2 weeks before the meeting for everybody on
That-
the board to review.
That could work.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
September 9th by noon.
By noon, and then we can have an October 3rd meeting, okay? So,
I mean, we can even
No,
give
the
him.
September 24th meeting.
It's really just the one survey map we're looking at. So,
Right.
I mean, it's not like we have to go through a whole package. You can even give them an extra week on that. It's one piece of paper we're
All
looking
right,
for.
so contact somebody and get back in touch with them. Let me know how long they say it's gonna take. In case, maybe I can adjust the date again. All right,
Thank
but
you.
let's start with the 9th.
thank you.
You're welcome.
That starts
Appreciate
tomorrow.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Okay. So, back to old business. The next item on the agenda is Brandell, Honor and Saul. I think the last time,
needed clarification from the building inspector as to why the one shed was the only one that needed a variance.
That's correct.
I spoke with him, the other ones have been moved. The only one is because it's on a cement pad, that is the only one that needs a variance. Everything else is
Yeah,
legit on his property. He's just trying, because he bought the property when it was in this state, they're just trying to make that one shed conforming. So you had asked me to speak to him about why nothing else needed the variance, and he said everything else was good, it was just this one shed.
Was it that they were moved, or there was
The others moved,
Oh, I thought I remembered.
and it was just the
I thought
one
you
that's,
just said that two of them had applied for
two of them have permits,
permits.
and then the one, last one is because of the concrete pad. It's,
And they have electric also, that's correct?
Yeah.
yes.
So which sheds have moved and which one needs a variance? And did they really move a two-story garage?
No, the garage has permits.
So they have a permit, they were granted a variance to build it that close to the property line under that old permit from 1997?
That's when it was granted, in 97. He said the only thing that needs that variance is that one shed.
Shows on here.
Everything else is fine. Nothing else needs anything else from the board.
Did you by any chance have a survey of the property made when you purchased this new lot? No. No. Okay. So here again, we're looking at an old map.
Excuse me, I'm not sure what survey that you're looking at, but the last survey that I have was made for the prior owner. Well, we're not sure who the owner was. There was a lot of, and it was for Matt Buckley, and Matt Buckley bought this property in 2016, I think. So the survey that you're looking at is certainly no older than 3 years.
Do we by any chance have a full copy of this survey map so that we can see the title block, the surveyor's
I do
signature
not
and
unless
seals?
Ben does.
Well, let's check into that, see if Ben's got something better on file than this. Because I don't like this board making decisions on maps that are not legitimate documents. You know, not having title blocks, not having signatures and seals on them, that's, for me, that's problematic. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Where did you get this survey?
From you.
From Ben.
From the building inspector.
Well,
He might have the large, I don't know whether he has a full-scale one. I have no way to make a copy of a full-scale one.
Go
So
to
I
a print
don't,
shop and have it, have copies made. If there's a full-scale copy of this map with all the borders on it, all the signatures
find
and
out from
seals,
Ben.
let's see if we can get that. I hate to do this, piece by piece here, but, the last time they were here, we didn't even have a clear indication. And this is the problem of not having an accurate map. This map shows me all these buildings all too close to the line, yet we're being asked to give a variance only on one of the three buildings. Somebody's reporting one of the sheds have been moved, the other one had a waiver from back in 1997 or whatever it was. It's a very unclear record to me here. And I really would rather base this decision on an overall map that's accurate and up to date. I would like to see if the building inspector has this 2016 map from Buckley and a complete copy of it. Maybe we can work with that. If that thing gets marked up and shows exactly what's existing out there.
well, I can tell you that this is what's existing out there.
Yeah, there's a overhead from April 17th, 2016, which seems to match exactly what's on here, but
We're not talking nowhere
that's the
near.
only,
Well,
and the sheds look like they're lined up exactly the same way, the way that these are set back,
That's what
but
this
it's
is,
still from
the
3 years
newest
ago.
version that
Yeah.
has been
shed
done.
under
in
permit
2016.
2018 and move to meet setbacks. Right, so, I mean, here it says it's 3 feet away, and then here, it's somebody else, then there's a note that says it meets the setbacks. The setbacks on a shed from a side property line or a rear property line is 10 feet. So it's either 3 feet away or it's 10 feet away. I know this is frustrating. It's going very slowly because we asked for clarification on what it is that was being asked for, and now I'm asking for actually, a full copy of this map. Preferably, what I'd like to see is a accurate map of the property today, so we know what kind of a decision we're making and what it's based on. If this thing doesn't represent the condition of the property now, I mean, sure.
What makes you think that this doesn't represent the property as it exists now?
Well, because one note on here says the
Well,
shed.
those are notes. I'm just talking about the map. We're just talking about the map. We're not talking about the notes.
Well, because
what makes you think that the map is not accurate? That's all I want. That's the only question I'm asking.
Because there are notes on this map that says that the shed has been moved and no longer needs a setback variance.
And that was okayed by Ben. Ben said that it meets that variance now, right? Or
I don't know.
I guess the question is, was it actually moved from the spot that's shown on the map, or is it in the location that it's shown on the map? Because if it's in the location that it's shown on the map, then it doesn't comply. But if it was moved, then the map isn't accurate. Right?
That's correct. And that's why I was asking the question last month, why are we not granting 3 variances for the 3 buildings that are all too close to the property line? And we've gone no further. I mean, what does Ben
When you
actually
go
have
out
in
there,
his letter
when you
here?
go out to the property now, those 2 small sheds, are the rear of the 2 sheds, is the rear line, are they parallel, are they lined up with each other, or is one further off the property line than the
I
other?
think that maybe you should go out and look at it, instead of, I've already told you that I think that this is fairly accurate. So I'm telling you based on what I have seen. Now, if you don't think that my judgment is correct vis-a-vis this map, then maybe you should send somebody out. And I suspect that Ben has been out a number of times because he's given us something of residence, whatever it is that he needs, certificate of residence. So I think that he has answered most of your questions. We're only looking at 6 inches here, and we've listened to people here for, that are looking for 10,000 square feet and building new houses and 6 variances. We're not asking for the world here.
Right.
We don't want to build a new ark. All we're asking you is, and the gentleman who lives on the other side of that fence is what's his name?
Tony Cardone.
Tony Cardone, who I think you may or may not know, but I think you're familiar with the name. And he has said that he would be more than happy to supply a letter to this board. He says he has no influence on the board. He wouldn't do it in terms of trying to influence the board, but he would be more than happy to write a letter stating that he has no problem.
Right, and he was here at the last meeting we had,
Yes.
and he sat in, and he listened, and he mentioned that he does not object to these sheds being too close to the
So the only
line.
people that it really, and there may be lots of things that I don't know about. I certainly have nearly the knowledge about all these rules and regulations that you do. I'm certainly not trying to put myself in your place. But it seems to me, Raymond that I am, that the only 2 people that really affects is myself and the people who own the property adjacent to us. And he has already stated that he has no problem or no objection to those 6 inches or whatever it is. So I think, we ran this thing for 3 months now, 4 months now. Excuse me. We're we're not asking to build Noah's Ark here. You know, all we're asking is for 6 inches that already exist. And I know that your decisions are important, and they reflect who you are. But in the end,
Yes, I can agree with you that this is a minor matter as far as setbacks go and variances. And this was constructed this way before you bought the property, and you're sitting here trying to get it cleaned up. And, you know, it just frustrates me to not have accurate survey maps when we're being asked to make these variances. But this is rather minor. I do hear your point. And the building inspector provided what kind of a clarification that we're only dealing with?
It's only dealing with the
lot
one
number
shed
2.
that's left.
Yeah, I mean, from a legal standpoint, Mr. Chairman, you know, as frustrating as it is, because it is frustrating, because we're looking at things that look different from what we're being told, and things aren't matching up. However, if you focus on, you know, what the board's jurisdiction is, right? The board's jurisdiction is to have the building inspector make determinations and make zoning determinations, and he's made a determination, right, wrong, or indifferent, that the only variance that's required on this property is this particular shed. So we're seeing something that looks maybe different on the map, but he's made his determination that the variance that is required is this particular one. So technically what's before the board, if you want to view it that way, is the variance application for just the one that was denied by Mr. Maldonado. So it would be within the board's purview if you were so inclined under all the circumstances to look at this, look at the big picture, and say that's what Ben has determined. He's clarified specifically the question through Noreen, that no other variances are required for the other sheds. So you could focus, if you so chose,
Just answering his letter.
Just answering his letter and looking at just this variance on this particular shed, and then, you know, applying the variance criteria to it.
Do we even have jurisdiction to go after a zoning variance that wasn't brought to us?
No, I mean, look, it's technically one of the, technically no. You know, as a practical matter, yes, because if there's a glaring zoning violation that the building department has, you know, either overlooked or missed or something like that, then that's something that's good practice to bring it to the attention and deal with it all at once.
Okay.
So it's within your purview to talk about it. But
Okay.
if we have a situation like this where we can't really get to the bottom of it, and the building inspector has been asked for clarification, gave clarification that he's aware of the issue and still sticks by his determination that it's just this one, then I think the board is really confined to just look at
But
that
he
one.
signed off on this, according to this, in March.
Yeah, so, right, so it's not, this board doesn't issue building permits or certificates of occupancy. All it does is pass on variance applications, and then it goes back to the building inspector. If he says, oh, no, you gave this one, turns out you were right, I can't issue you a certificate of occupancy because you need another one, well then, that's unfortunate for the applicant. He would then send the applicant back here to look at that next one. So I think what we're trying to do is kill multiple birds with one stone if we can. If there is an issue with the other one, let's deal with it all now for you. So that's kind of what the board's doing. They're not trying to give you a hard time. They're saying, look, if there's going to be a problem, let's deal with it all at once. But now Ben is saying, look, it is just the one. So let's just deal with the one.
All right, we'll take him at his word.
Yeah.
I did confirm with him again this week that it was just the one. I spoke to him when the applicant was here the first time, and it was just the one, and I said to him, I said, Brandell is back on for the board, and I said, I just want to verify again, you're claiming it is just, he says, Noreen, it is just the one that needs a variance. Everything else is fine. And I said, okay.
Okay.
So the only other issue was, that came up at the last meeting, was the issue of whether a GML referral is required in
I
this.
sent it in today, because
So
it is with.
it is
I
500
showed-
feet.
Yes, I had, the assistant building inspector, he helped me with the,
Measured it
one
out.
of the maps that's in your thing, and he showed
Yeah.
it to me as to how I should figure it.
Yeah,
So now I know for future.
good.
Looking at it, how to do it, and it was mailed out today.
Okay, so my recommendation would be, you know, if you're looking for it, would be to go ahead and put it on for a public hearing for the next meeting. The GML referral's going out, 30 days will have elapsed
Right.
by the
Right.
next meeting, so that will
we'll
be
have that
done,
back.
and they will have given a response. So the board would be in a position to have a public hearing in the next meeting, open, close it, and decide it, if it sees fit.
That sounds good. There we go.
And it's not just because you're wearing a Duke National Champs shirt and I'm a Duke
Well,
alum.
you know, I could work
Certainly
with 5 chapters on it.
Don't worry, I don't have any of those.
I could do the goat.
The ceilings on my desk, go to GML.
Thank you.
Okay, so, just a clarification. I mean, I don't need to provide anything else for, doing.
No, we're
Okay,
good there. We're
that's-
gonna
that's
take
all.
the
I
building
just wanna
inspector
make
at
sure
his
that
word.
I'm
We checked
doing-
twice
I'm
and,
doing my half, or
Yes.
my third, or my 5%, or
Your
whatever.
part, whatever
my
it may be.
part, whatever part that might be.
now who
Okay, I will
sends out?
draft the letter for the notice. I will have Dave approve it, the attorney, and then I will get it to you with the list from the assessor's office for everybody that you have to mail it to. And then you'll mail out certified return receipt, and then you have to do that 10 days before the meeting. The meeting is September 24th, so you have to have them postmarked by September 14th, and the white copies have to be either emailed or brought to me as soon as they're mailed. And then the green cards come in the night of the meeting.
Okay, and you will get, okay.
I will be back in touch with both of you.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
gentlemen, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Love those plans.
Hey, Dave.
You were doing it.
you have
Was I doing it
Twitter.
again?
It's you.
It's you.
That's funny. It's like
You're the clicker.
We have
I'm a
one,
clicker.
Apology accepted.
we have one more. tonight.
No more am I allowed to bring these pens. I should swap it out.
Here's a highlight.
No,
To be
now it's
confiscated from me upon entry. It's like leave your guns at the door.
Yeah, I'm gonna be grabbing your pens.
So, next applicant is Nelson Luciano.
That's my standard.
Okay, Mr. Luciano, the last time you were here, we had discussed your application. We asked you, to come back with a survey map. And I thank you, you came back with a valid survey map. It's all updated. It shows accurately where your driveways are, where your house is, all the improvements that you've made on the property. It shows the bulk requirements. With pre-existing non-conforming variance requirement. So the questions that the building department raised in regard to your pool and the overall lot itself is minimum front yard setback is required to be 40 feet. He said the pool is located 17 feet at the west side of Park Terrace property line. This is an encroachment of 23 feet, and it's actually located only 5.3 feet from the property line as opposed to 17 feet. And therein lies the reason we always ask for these survey maps. So that is one of the variances that you're looking for. Side, the setback for the pool. The other is maximum lot coverage. Maximum lot coverage allowable in this zoning district is 30%. Your lot is at 47%. So that's a substantial increase. Minimum rear yard setback is 35. And this is at 2.6 for the shed
Okay.
on the back of the house.
That's
Shed or a deck?
a deck.
That's a deck?
That deck was there when I purchased the house. I just extended,
Okay. Yeah, the house is actually 12.7. Side yard 15.
Was there ever a permit issued for that deck, do you know?
when I purchased the home.
I was just looking at this.
Yes, I applied for a permit for the deck when I applied for the pool, for a deck for the pool also.
Was there ever one issued though, for the deck that was there before you bought the house, do you know? I was just looking at this map from '89, doesn't show a deck on the back of the house. I know it's it's as old as I am, but.
Yeah,
I was just
I have
curious.
one. I think I have one here from. I don't have it here. An older one from 1989, I think it was, or 1993.
Yeah, this is from '89, this one just doesn't show a deck on the house, I was just
There
curious.
was one that was more.
Somewhere in between.
Sun house. And then you got the sun house here. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here. There's also a sun house with a patio that's only 10 feet from the front property line, where 40 is required. So which ones are we asking for? What does Ben have in his letter? Because Ben didn't have the benefit of the actual survey map when he wrote his letter. So I want to be careful here that we are asking all the right variances, and maybe we might ask Ben to do a quick review of this map and see what else he...
Do we have to determine which is the front as a starting point, maybe?
No, all yards on corner lots and existing through lots abutting any street shall meet the requirements of the front yard setbacks for the district which it is located on, effective date of this zoning chapter. That's 5739. That's what he's quoting here. 5739. All yards on corner lots and existing through lots abutting any street shall meet the requirements of front yard setbacks for the district in which it is located on. Effective date of this zoning chapter. So that's correct. Yards. Okay. So, I mean, if we were to draw a building envelope on this thing, where do you stop the variances?
I don't recall if I gave one to Ben when these came in. I might have. I don't recall.
The other item besides the setbacks is that your fence, you got a 6-foot high vinyl fence that's completely within the town right away. And I've been out to this site and I've, pulling out of Park Terrace and looking up Cromwell Hill Road, it really does impede sight distance up the roadway. So that's a bit of a safety issue. That it's not brought up in Ben's letter, but that's a concern I also have with the lot.
So we don't know if Ben has seen this.
No, we know Ben has not seen this
know that,
map.
okay.
Yeah, because this was not provided to him when he was out there looking around at the survey, at the property. He was looking at an old map, perhaps. But this one, brings to light all of the improvements that are out there and their setback distances. Because like the sun house here, when it says sun, what is this structure, this sun house?
It's a pergola from Home Depot, the aluminum little pergola.
So not a permanent structure in any way? It's not?
No, it's not bolted down or
Okay,
it's not in the ground.
all right. Composite deck, and then we have the deck that's only 6.4 feet. So Ben is only talking about
Is
the
this,
pool being 17 feet off of the Park Terrace, which it probably is, because Park Terrace, the edge of Park Terrace is 10 feet off the property line. So, I mean, that is clearly,
Yeah, but he's looking at the Zimmerman Engineering and Surveying sketch, which is showing the 17 feet from the edge of the pool
Right, but-
to the edge of the property line, not to Park Terrace. So it's that Zimmerman,
what date
Document
is
is-
that map?
it's
this pool's not the same
a different
correct?
pool.
Different pool.
It's a different pool.
Correct.
Yeah, this was a survey done for William and Evelyn Rapp, whenever that was. This looks very old. And that's the one, that's from 1989. So there used to be one that was 17 feet, and now the existing condition is 5.3 feet to the property line. And so what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, is that the 17, he might have taken it off the old survey, or you might say,
Yeah, if you were
it's a total of 17 out to the edge of Park Terrace,
right.
which is obviously not the proper.
I think they're also measuring this to the property line here, not to Park Terrace, that's 17 feet. It looks
Yeah,
like
that
it's
17
probably-
feet is.
Right, okay, so that's what
Yeah.
he's taking it from, and that's a map dated 1989, so that was
And that's still to
30
the,
years
to the
ago.
property line, not to Park Terrace, would come out to here.
Right.
So
That's just the way he has it worded here, the side.
Did you remove that old pool and replace it with the current pool, or was that
There was no
gone
pool.
before you guys
Gone
moved
before
in?
you got
Yeah,
there.
there was no pool when I got there.
Okay.
I was just asking, I sort of would have understood if it was there and you said, hey, we're just gonna put something back exactly where it was, and you thought that's why I was asking that.
Oh.
17. Maximum lot coverage shall be verified. Lot coverage. Here he's saying the maximum lot coverage, 25%, shall be verified, but surveyor is reporting that the maximum lot coverage allowable is 30% in this zone, SR10. We can check that. And what they actually have out there is 47%. So we have a lot of development on a little lot, much of which doesn't fit within the setback requirements. So this is SR10.
Can I ask what exactly does that mean? Maximum lot coverage?
That's the percent impervious coverage on the lot. That includes rooftops, sidewalks, patios, driveways, two of which you have. So all of that gets added up and determine, how much green space do you have left on the property. And acre, SR20.
And so the calculation that has been made is that the max allowable is 30%, and you're at 47.2 now, which is over by 17.2%.
Is that Sun House
30%.
on a, what is that on?
It's on pavers.
Does that get included with the 47%?
Yes.
Yes.
It does. Okay.
All hard surfaces.
Yes.
You know roughly how big that space is?
I want to say, I know the pergola is a 9 by 9. The patio's got to be
Let's go.
Like 15 by 15 sort of? That's
about that approximately.
Yep, that's about it. That's right on the money, 15 by 15. All right, so at a minimum, we're looking at variance for the the pool setback, which should be 40, and it's only 5.3 feet, as opposed to the 15 that was reported on the old survey map from 30 years ago. In addition to that, we have decks that are also in the front yard. And we have fence lines that are outside the limits of the property. Do we?
By way of suggestion, if Ben has not seen this survey, my thought would be to put this over one more month and get this survey to Ben and have him issue a new letter now, knowing the exact existing conditions, and he can then refer back to this board what variances he determines would be necessary, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that's one, that's
I don't see how we could go forward without Ben looking at this.
yeah.
Because he doesn't even mention the rear yard, yet the surveyor shows a minimum rear yard of 2.6 feet, where 35 is required. I mean, the house itself is only 12.7, but
7.
you know what? They might be choosing the opposite yard as their rear yard from the building, right? Because the house is on Cromwell Hill Road. You can say, you know, you have 2 front yards, but you got to pick one side yard and one rear yard. So that's,
Yeah,
if you pick this as your rear,
Isn't the definition of the rear yard opposite the front yard? So they make them both rear yards?
no.
No,
On corner lots, you get one side yard, one rear yard, and two front yards. And you get to pick which one you're going to call your rear yard. In this case, you know, minimum side yard required is 15. The house itself is 12.7. Minimum rear yard required is 35, and you have almost 20 feet on this side here, if you call that the rear. But the surveyor picked this dimension of 2.6, which is off the back of the deck to the side yard. You know, depends on how you want to call the yards, but I think, you know, given the situation of the house and all the setbacks here, I'd rather call the easterly line the rear yard. That comes closest to,
The setback, the measurement from the property line is to the foundation, correct? Like, as with like the Bickle project, didn't they clarify?
Yeah,
that?
it's not the deck.
So that would give you, if that's correct, that would give you a little more.
0.7.
Right.
I think it
Isn't it-
depends if something's covered, right? If it's covered.
Any of those decks on the back of the house covered?
The front porch is not covered, and the deck in the back is not covered. I just have a little pergola back there.
Like a removable?
Yeah.
Just like the one, like one of those.
yeah, because
Because then the distance isn't 2.6, right? Isn't it? How?
yeah, then
Well,
then
you got
it's
another
like 30
12.7.
feet.
Yeah, I think you've got to get it back to Ben to look at this stuff, because he may disagree with what Sparaco and Youngblood have determined is which yard is which, what setback is which, you know, what counts, what doesn't. It might be that, you know, Ben looks at it even more favorably than Sparaco and Youngblood did. Either way, I think you and the board and Ben all need to know, how does Ben view it? What is the current status on this property? And does he agree with the bulk table? Does he not? And then get you back before the board for whatever appropriate relief you need or you would like to ask the board for, knowing what the building department says the problem is.
So, do I ask or can I ask which could be my rear yard, or how does that work?
I think that's ultimately what this board is saying. That's Ben Maldonado, the building inspector's ultimate determination. He will make the determination which is which under the zoning code. He's the final arbiter of what the zoning code says and how it's interpreted. And then if you disagree with what he says, then you could appeal and say, Ben, no, you're wrong. Zoning board, take a look at this for me. That's a different avenue of relief.
That's an
Unlikely.
interpretation.
It's an interpretation or an appeal of his determination. Or he determines it and you say, look, I just want relief from that. I agree with you, you've interpreted the code right, Ben, but zoning board, give me relief for the following reasons.
I guess these are, what's also throwing us is we're looking at the deck that wraps around the back corner of your house there, and you have two boxes that say OH on them. One says wood deck. We're trying to figure out what that is.
Well, do you see the OH by the stairs?
Yep.
That's, the deck is where it says wood deck and OH. The only thing is I put a, like pergola.
So OH may be overhead?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not fixed.
No, I mean, what do you mean by fixed?
Is it permanent? Is it part of the deck? Is it on posts? And did you need a building permit for it type of thing, or did you go to Home Depot and buy a pop-up one?
No, I needed a building permit, and I applied for the building permit.
So it's covered. So
Yeah.
what I was asking
Now
before is the back
that's
here shows
2.6.
2.6 feet.
Yeah.
Where he's got it measured is going from the property line to the covered portion of the dwelling.
Okay.
As opposed to, we had the reason I had asked was that we had another project that we weren't
Had an
sure.
open deck.
It had an open deck. So at that point, the measurement is from the property line to the foundation. It doesn't include the deck.
Oh, okay.
So
Once
when
you
it's
put a
covered,
cover
it
on
changes the
that.
measurement.
Even though the cover's like a little plastic thing?
Yeah, if you had to get a building permit for it, I would assume that it's,
Well, the building permit was for the deck itself, the entire deck.
Not the cover.
yeah.
Well, I included the cover on the drawings and.
And is this something where you could go home tonight and take it down in 10 minutes?
Good, yeah.
So, I mean, that's, I think, what he would need to clarify is if
Maybe
it's.
15 minutes.
Yeah. Because that would make a difference of about 10 feet. If he determines that it's permanent versus not permanent.
Yeah, I think you need Ben to look at it, and get out there and issue a new letter advising the board what the existing conditions are and what requires relief and what doesn't. He's gonna know what building permits or COs have been granted, what counts and what doesn't, and that will govern what this board needs to do, if anything.
And I had a question about an easement from back in 1999. Originally, I didn't see it on my title and my deed, but I got a copy of it, and it doesn't really spell it out. I made copies for you, if I can.
Careful with the map.
Easement per library.
Thank you.
No, it doesn't state, doesn't say easement on it, and forgive me, I'm not too savvy on the whole matter, but it says here on the
Third page.
actually the fourth page.
29, 31, 32.
It states a see Schedule A annexed hereto and made a part hereof. It states on the 6th of October 1999, recorded on the 21st of October 1999, Orange County Clerk's Office, Liber 5169 CP 223. Now, I was not aware that there was an easement until the property next to mine was purchased and it was brought to my attention that there was an easement.
What's the address of your house?
78 Cromwell Hill Road.
78, okay.
And if you see on the
Yep.
survey, got two driveways side to side off of Park Terrace. My driveway and my neighbor's driveway. Then it says easement. And
I'm missing where you're talking about an easement.
Yeah, I don't.
Here's an easement on property right here. It's called out easement for that, and it's just this line here.
Oh, I see.
Runs up the side, comes in here. It starts 9
What was your question
feet
about the
over.
so I wasn't aware that it was an easement, and apparently my neighbor has on his title and deed that there's an easement. My question was, is this document here on my title and my deed advising me that there's an easement? Because I don't see.
So this describes, this Schedule A describes the lot itself. Went around that, and that's just describing the lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is your deed, right? This is the deed by which you took title to your property.
Correct.
And then Schedule A is laying out what you own. I mean, I can't really, we're not really in a position to give you legal advice on what's in your deed and to give you advice as to what your property rights are vis-a-vis your neighbor. Are you burdened by an easement? Are you not burdened by an easement? Is it a valid easement? Is it not a valid easement? We can't really give you that kind of advice,
Okay.
unfortunately. Quickly looking at it, I don't see mention of the easement on your Schedule A, but I've only looked at it very quickly. But that may or may not mean that it's a valid easement. There's all sorts of laws that apply to that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, because the surveyor is showing that easement on the property. He's got it drawn out here on this map.
Yeah, I gave him a copy of what my neighbor gave me that states that there was an easement. And the question was whether or not it stated it on my title or my deed, that's all.
Oh.
If it states it on his title and deed but not on mine, I'll just take that up with my neighbor.
I think it would have to do with if it's filed, the way it's filed, correct?
You should go back, you'd have to do some research on it and look back at the maps and the things that are referenced in the description. For example, it references map number 1 of the property. You'd have to go back. Like people that search title, again, give you general advice. There are people called title abstractors that go and look, and they look back in your chain of title to see whether you're on notice of the easement, whether the easement was recorded in your chain of title somewhere or mentioned in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's impossible for anybody looking at just your deed to know that or not. So, the thing that I would just give you a bit of advice to do would be to get in touch with a title abstractor or a real estate attorney who can look at the issue and actually give you legal advice as your counsel and guide you in a way that's, helpful to you.
The surveyor must have it, though, because he's referencing it right here on his map. He's calling it easement per Liber 5971, page 70. That's the document you want to look at, because your property description, which is in here as part of your deed, just talks about the shape of your lot. It doesn't really talk about any easement. The easement may have been filed as a separate document, this Liber and page 5971-page 70. That's the document you want to see. That describes the easement. There could have been an easement that was granted from one property owner to the other at some point in time that didn't end up in the main deed. It just ends up as an easement on the books at the county clerk's office. That's the document you want to look at. That should describe, and it seems to be, well described here by the surveyor, so he must have a copy of that. You might want to start with him, ask him where he got that from and if he can provide you with a copy of it. Because what it doesn't state here, it says it's an easement, but it doesn't state to what purpose, and to whose benefit.
Yeah, I can't see a surveyor just putting it on there because your neighbor gave him something.
Yeah, well,
Whatever he gave
my
him,
neighbor.
but I mean, it must have been correct enough for a surveyor to put it on his
file.
survey.
All right, great. Thank you.
Curious to see what it's for. All right, so we're.
So do I provide Ben with one of those copies or of the survey or is he gonna come out to the property?
Do you have an extra map to provide then?
I could go to Staples and get one, that's fine.
Yeah, I would need at least one, because I think I went through all the ones that I have, and that's why I'm thinking I gave him one, because I only have my one, but usually I have 2 spare in my folder, and I only have 1, so I think I might have given Ben one just the other day when I was getting the packets ready. So I will verify with Ben in the morning, and if I need you to get more, I'll send you a email asking you to get me 2 more copies.
And just ask him if he could review this map and
Yes.
compare it to his letter of May 1st, 2019, and see if there's anything in here that needs to be updated.
Okay, I will do that tomorrow. I believe he's there tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Noreen.
Mm-hmm. And
So-
then we'll be back in touch.
Okay, great. And do do I have to be home to give him access to come onto the property and do whatever he has to do, or does that work?
That, he'll work that out with you.
Yeah, he'll probably,
If they have to come out, you'll hear from either someone from the building department.
All right, great, thank you.
yeah, because
very much.
your contact information is in your application package.
Yes.
Right, so he can reach out and contact you if he's going out to do a site inspection.
Okay, great.
It would probably behoove you to be there so you can ask him these questions about,
Yeah.
discuss some of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Setbacks and things, those pergolas and, you know.
Yeah, definitely proactively interact with Ben in this process, so you have an understanding and he has an understanding.
Okay, all right, great, absolutely, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay. Planning projects. Approval of minutes. Do we have minutes for approval?
They were from May,
Should have two, May and June.
May and June. Yeah, I
All
recognize.
right,
You probably didn't have them in yours. I have extras. I carry extras of them.
Okay. May and June. So if we want to take a few minutes and read through the minutes.
I think we have, there's no one absent, so we have enough to weigh in on them.
Oh, do we not? Let's see.
Was everybody, first as a threshold matter before you take the time, pardon me,
That one's good.
was everybody here, all three of the people here, were they
Yep.
here for that meeting? Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
both meetings. We're good. We're covered.
Okay.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to go through the minutes? With regard to the minutes for May 28th, 2019, anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried. With regard to the minutes for June 25th, 2019, anybody want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from June.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So be it.
Aye.
That completes our business for tonight. Would anybody, before I close the meeting, on Luftar Roman, did we ever get the marked up map showing how they were going to build the driveway?
Okay, so I received a phone call from Mike Sandor, and I was gonna talk to you about it. I didn't know whether I should do it on camera or off camera. The minutes show that he needs to have that submitted to the building inspector at time of applying for his permit. It doesn't say, and it's in the minutes, and it doesn't say he has to provide it to us before his resolution. It says it has to be submitted to, with giving us copies, but it has to be submitted to the building inspector at the time of permit.
I don't recall it playing out that way, quite honestly.
I played it back twice.
I thought we asked to have that information, to have him mark up that map. He said, no big deal, he'll get it done, and that he would provide that to us before we approve the resolution.
Dave says building inspector.
I don't remember. I'm gonna look at my notes, see if my notes show.
Because, all right, well, we'll look to clarify that.
Right, that's fine. I did want to mention it because that was something.
No,
I did
that
go
was
back over
clearly, my
because-
understanding was that they were going to provide that to us to demonstrate exactly how they were going to set that driveway and what kind of improvements that they were going
Right, they would provide it to us at the same time they provided it to the building inspector, it says.
And to the highway department. We
Yes.
told them that they had
He
to
would
get a
give us
highway
enough
copy.
copies for them.
My notes say, the applicant shall submit the plan to the town building inspector, and then I have showing all dimensions and the lot coverage component, and subject to review and approval. But I don't say further. I typically speaking, when you're doing subject to and you're having approval, it doesn't then come back to review or approval of the board, because then now you're considering something post-approval and outside the hearing. So typically what you're doing is entrusting the building inspector to get your decision and then enforce your decision and say, look, the applicant's gonna come back and the applicant's gotta, do something that's consistent with what the board granted. And if it's not consistent, the building inspector is gonna enforce that on your behalf. That would be typically the way it's done.
We did that 'cause
My notes are unclear as to what we actually did that night.
Didn't we do that because we were having a hard time figuring out how to show Ben in writing what exactly the determination was?
I think so. I think we were trying to verbalize it.
Yeah.
And the applicant understood and we understood, but we wanted to make sure that there was something in writing in the files that could be enforced going forward. So,
lesson learned. We should get that before making a resolution then. If we're subject to presenting a map, we should make them present that map before going forward.
yeah, I mean, you could do it when it's crystal clear. Often you'll have things like, legal documents or like covenants that somebody has to record, and you can do that subject to the attorney's review. And a lot of times you'll do subject to the building inspector's review, or subject to the obtaining of a building permit or a permit from the DEC or somewhere else. And you just sort of trust that. When you have, an issue where you're not sure that the applicant is actually understanding what you're imposing, then I think it's wise going forward to make sure, hey, look, it's going to take one more month. Give us that map before we give you the final approval, because that's what we're actually approving.
Yeah.
So basically, if it's something as simple as removing something, it's self-evident.
Correct.
But now we're going, you go 8 feet from this direction, I don't remember the exact numbers, 14 feet this direction. It's not quite as self-evident.
Yeah, I think it's, one of those things where, you'll know it when you see it. You can't quite define it, but when if you're struggling to visualize it and you're struggling to describe it, then it's probably a good idea to see it. But if you're reasonably confident that, hey, okay, look, you're going to move the shed from 3 feet to 5 feet from the property line, you don't need to see a new plan that's showing that, because it's clear, it's crystal clear. There's no room for disagreement or interpretation. If there's some lack of clarity in your mind, then get the map, look at it for the next meeting, approve the map, and say that's what we're approving. The map dated so-and-so.
Okay. Lesson learned.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah.
That was
Okay, with that, motion to close the meeting unless anybody has anything else.
no,
I'm not sure, but process-wise, is there a way to include a checkbox before, with an application, so that we are getting those maps, so people aren't burning another month waiting?
Yeah,
To make it a mandatory, is that a legal thing to do?
Our code doesn't say it has to be a current full-fledged survey for the ZBA. Because you're going by the referral from either the planning board is sending them down here.
drawing to scale.
I mean, for more
Sure.
process,
Showing
for
present
meeting
proposed.
process, to save people time.
Yeah, I
would be a
mean,
way to include
because
that, because it was-
it's a bad habit that the town has gotten into in certain respects in accepting these 20-year-old maps, We saw with Mr. Luciano here tonight. He came to us with an updated map, and lo and behold, his property's vastly different than it was 20 years ago. And that changes everything. So now, not only does he lose a month there, he's losing a month. He's got to go back to Ben and get an actual interpretation of what's shown on the actual map. And that's a problem. For me personally, I really can't find myself making zoning decisions based on maps that are 30 years old. Property has changed hands several times. People have constructed things. I mean, they're asking us to make a decision on what exists out there today. I'd like to see a map of what's out there today, because all too often you don't get the full story unless you have an up-to-date survey map.
How does, how?
And by the way, marking up somebody else's survey map that was prepared by a professional is an illegal action. So that does not, cut mustard with me on.
I will say this, though, and I've, I advise a lot of zoning boards, and some zoning boards are very strict about that, and many take it on a case-by-case basis. And my own personal view is that the case-by-case basis is probably a better way to go, because sometimes, when people are marking up those surveys, and let's say they have a very minor variance application, and there's no real controversy over it, and all of a sudden the applicant has to spend $1,500 to provide a full as-built survey of things that Ben has looked at and hasn't determined to be zoning code violations. And so, in certain circumstances, you can grant relief as a zoning board in the absence of a full-fledged survey. It is good practice to require the survey. If in doubt, require the survey. But there are exceptions that can be made. For example, I think with Mr. What's his name? Mr. Brandell
Right.
is a perfect example of that. Right? It's confusing. It's on the edge, but when you look at it, it's you
Right.
can grant it because okay. We know we're stating on the record that the shed is here. It's this shed, and it is 2 feet. And we're asking for the variance for 2 feet instead of 5 feet. The record will be clear in that regard. It's not an absolute black and white. You must have an as-built survey in order to grant the relief as the zoning board. Is it good practice to have it in the zoning and the building department and be crystal clear? Yes. It's not
I think-
always necessary.
Right, I think so, because a lot of these cases we have before us are very big asks. As we saw earlier tonight, somebody came in, they had 4 things that Ben was asking for, and, we looked at it and said, well, you also don't meet lot area
I think
requirements.
we saw
So
both
that's the
extremes
5th.
tonight.
We did.
absolutely
Ironically, we saw both
both.
sides.
Where, don't be spending $1,500 on a survey for a shed.
But look at Mr. Luciano.
Exactly,
It was
where it's like.
5.3 feet instead of 17 feet.
It looks like the map of a carnival. I mean, literally, with.
Yeah. Right.
I
Good
think
way of putting
my
it.
reasoning for asking that was because I can understand somebody like Mr. Brandel's frustration with saying, "Oh, I gotta wait another month for this," and then it's not just a month; it's it's a month and then maybe another month, depending on at what point they can go to hearing,
Right.
Or maybe, or if not to require it, maybe is there a way to include a notice to them when they're submitting an application, or to make some type of notification that, hey, if you don't include this, it may drag it out, and
Yeah,
or
give them a
that
heads
further
up.
document.
I like that approach.
Just because I know my own application with the planning board of my house, there was things that to no fault of theirs that they would say, hey, if I had known before that there's a potential for me to maybe need to submit, then it's on me. Was I the one that forced the delay in the determination being made, as opposed to it's their fault.
Right.
Just to ease people's schedules. I know, like Mr. Khan, they're going to be getting into building in December. If that's
Right.
something where they had the back half of the house open while they're building, that could foreseeably put it into next spring for them, which could cause some kind of a hardship on.
Maybe on the cover sheet, or as part of when an applicant comes in to pick up the application, or wherever they get it, a simple one line, please take notice that, the board strongly recommends and may in fact require you to provide a current as-built survey with full bulk table. Strongly encourages letting them know, hey, look, I better do this, and that might be required of me anyway. Maybe I ought to get ahead of this.
Because I saw he was about ready to leave his skin, and I don't really fault him if he had known. And it's just trying to think down the road.
Yeah.
Well, we asked for that the last time they were here.
I don't mean that specifically.
And
I
that was
understand
months
that.
ago.
Yeah.
So they hear what they want to hear sometimes. All right.
Noreen, are people typically coming into the building department and picking up the hard packet as opposed to getting it online, right? Can you get this application online?
ZBA, no. Planning board, yes.
So when they come in,
Trying to redo them so that they're nicer, and then it'll go up online, and they can just print right from the website.
so maybe in the interim, just a verbal, when people are picking up an application, say, look, just so you know,
Heads up.
the board strongly, recommends you provide an as-built survey. They may require it as part of the process, just so you know. And that way, Aaron, your recommendation is sort of being implemented, and giving people that heads up to say, hey, look, I did know that, or I'm going to do it before I submit this.
And if we are updating the application package, let's review it before we finalize it.
no,
Post it
you
up
have
there.
to-
Yes.
Yeah.
I have half of it done.
Okay.
I do it in my downtime,
It's a project.
and I don't have much of that right now. So it's not getting done very fast.
All right. So with that, motion to close the meeting.
I make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So be it.